Welcome, 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 everyone. All right. It says you're Matt Spadoni because I think he sent you the link. So everyone, that is Sheryl Creer. And so welcome to our third episode of what now is at least an 8-workshop series at how different industry professionals are using new technologies to streamline problematic compliance tasks. Our last episode was with Matt Alexander from Editable, and we talked about mapping and mobile GIS technology. It was a great episode. We actually ended up staying late with questions, so that felt really good. The episode before that was on construction compliance. And I have to say we're having a lot of fun doing these webinar episodes. So thank you for joining and being a part of it. And if you have any topics you would like us to cover in future episodes, please put that in the chat because we'd like to keep these going as long as we can add value to the community. We want to keep this going. So, all right. So today we've got another Matt with us, Matt Spadoni, right?
Yep.
Spadoni. Okay. And he comes to us from Environmental Design and Research, EDR, a New York company that provides environmental regulatory compliance, natural resource management, environmental impact assessment, ecological surveys, and construction monitoring services to industrial, government, municipal, and private clients. So all around environmental consulting firm. And also, we're so happy we have Sheryl Creer here from Stantec. Stantec is massive. So Stantec Community unites approximately 22,000 employees. Wow. 22,000 employees working in over 400 locations across 6 continents. That's incredible. How big do you think the environmental arm of Stantec is, like percentage-wise? Do you have any idea, Cheryl?
It's fairly small. I would say if I had to take a wild guess, maybe a quarter. We're more known for our architecture and engineering.
Right. Okay, great. So welcome to you two. I'll give more of an introduction a little bit later on the wonderful experience that you two have had. But for now, we hope that you ask questions, receive value, and walk away with real solutions to real problems. My name's Kristen Hazard. I'm the host. I'm the founder and the CEO of WildNote. WildNote is the sponsor of this episode, and it's an app specifically built for environmental consultants, for you folks. We have built data collection, data management, and reporting into the application to automate as many manual processes as possible. But today I'm super excited because it's a wetland episode to announce the release of our Wetland 4.0 product line. 4.0, that's 4 iterations we've been working on this product line. Some of the cool things that come out of the 4.0 release are fact neutral and rapid test calculations offline, smart searchable Munsell soils list, which we're very excited about, bulk export ordered by sampling point, GNSS integration, which we talked about last episode, geodatabase export, also talked about last episode, and Editable Grid, which is super cool way to edit all of your data in one place. And finally, the thing I'm most excited to talk about is our wetland photo log export. So now you can take all your photos from your field work, create an intro, pick which photos you want, update the caption. It'll already have the sampling point and the date on there. Put a little outro or conclusion or footnotes, and bam, you've got a full photo log from your wetland work. So that is very exciting. Also today with us is Nancy Douglas, our Director of Customer Success. Hi, Nancy.
Hi, everybody.
And our Director of Sales and Marketing, Rini Punzi, is here as well. Hi, Rini.
Hello.
All right. We are here to create a space for you and our guests, Matt and Cheryl, to talk about wetland compliance solutions. We'll introduce them in the moment, but first, Nancy has some housekeeping.
Hey, everybody. So thank you for coming. A lot of you folks are on the call I've met or talked to on the phone before, so it's really gratifying to have you here. And thank you to Matt and Cheryl. For me, it's been really nice working with you too. Housekeeping stuff, there's 2 ways to communicate with us during the workshop. If you're having technical issues, please use the chat. And if you want to post a question, you can do that through the Q&A area at the bottom of the Zoom window, and we will answer those questions towards the end of the episode. And so you kind of know what to expect. We're going to start with getting a little bit more intro on these folks, and then they're going to give us a story from the field or two. Then we'll go into how they're using technology with their wetland work. And then if we have time, we're going to hear about their other go-to apps and questions and answers. And finally, I want to say thanks to all of you for coming. We don't get to take you all to lunch, but we do get to, because of you being here, donate virtual lunches to frontline healthcare workers. Over the past 2 episodes, we've been able to pay for a total of 183 meals going out to healthcare workers in 2 different cities. And this episode is dedicated to the healthcare workers in New Orleans. So that's who will be getting some free lunches on us. So back to you, Kristen.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to introduce Matt and Cheryl now. Matt Spadoni performs wetland delineations and invasive species surveys, mostly for development of large-scale wind, solar, and utility projects. He's also heavily involved in the production of reports and GIS mapping related to these field studies. So this is really interesting, Matt. We were talking a little bit about this before we actually started broadcasting. So Matt, he got his environmental science with minors in GIS and biology at Paul Smith College, and then went on an adventure. So he was hiking the Appalachian Trail for 3 months and interviewed people he met about climate change. In that time, he hiked over 1,000 miles and spoke to over 250 people from around the world about how they have experienced climate change in their lifetime. This fall, Matt will be starting a master's program at San Jose State University in the Environmental Studies Department. Anybody hiring in the Bay Area? All right. So I also want to introduce Sheryl. Sheryl Creer is an MS in biology and a BS in botany from San Francisco State University. So, you know, one thing I learned, Cheryl, botany is hard. If there's one thing I have learned building WildNote is botany is hard, and you are like full on into the botany here. I love it. So your thesis involved working on the systematics of Arctostaphylos. sorry, as well as constructing a molecular.
Manzanitas.
Yeah, manzanitas. Thank you. A molecular phylogeny of the archaea. I can't say that either. So, anyway, she's a true botany nerd. She loves the Mojave Desert, and she was working as a botanist and as an environmental consultant now. And so you're doing a lot of rare plant surveys. You're doing some wetland work, some drainage delineation, impact analysis, habitat assessments, maps, vegetation, and preparing habitat restoration, mitigation, and monitoring plans. And again, you love the Mojave Desert, it sounds like. So welcome, Matt and Cheryl. All right, so what we like to start out with is stories from the field. So why don't we start with you, Cheryl? And if you could just share with us an amazing, crazy, happy, lovely, whatever kind of day out in the field you want to share.
Sure. So one of my very first jobs when I started as a consultant was working on a power line, like a wood to steel upgrade up in Tahoe National Forest. So it was really great. I got to be a part of writing the proposal and then doing the botanical surveys and then doing the wetland delineations. And then I was also doing the monitoring. So one day while I was out monitoring, we were in this really sensitive habitat. It's in a wetland, and it's also a culturally sensitive site. So I was there. There was a cultural resource monitor. The crew had only a 60-foot wide corridor to work in. They literally couldn't set foot outside of it. Mm-hmm. And the area they were supposed to work in was matted with timber mats. Uh-huh. So we're watching them, and you know, they've excavated a hole, and they put the replacement pole, and they're about to backfill. And they think it's a really good idea to transport the gravel for the backfill in a little bundle of geotextile fabric and carry it like a stork style with an excavator, like hanging from the bucket. And I'm like, no, this is not a good idea. This is not, you guys shouldn't do this, but I can't tell you what to do. I can advise you. Right. So as they're swinging it out over the wetland, the textile just like splits and like pounds and pounds of gravel go in the wetland.
Oh no.
Oh, no.
I got to watch. It was great. The next hour, all of these big burly crew members, hands and knees, like picking out gravel to get it out of the wetland.
Oh
So just a lesson in, maybe provide yourself more space for work and or don't use geotextile to transport gravel.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting first experience.
All right, Matt, how about you? You got one for us?
Yeah, mine is a little bit different. So a few years ago, I was working, mine has to do with animals. Even though I also am like Cheryl, kind of a plant nerd.
Yeah.
For some reason, when you see an animal that's not running away from you or flying from you, and actually interacting with another animal or its environment, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
And a few years ago, I was working on helping my professor with some lake sediment coring over the summer, where you basically tie two canoes together and paddle out to the lake and drop in a long pipe core to get out mud. And as we were paddling back, we saw an osprey flying circles kind of around the water and squawking a lot. And we were wondering, like, what is it doing? Why is it acting so weird? And after a few minutes, when we got to the shore, it finally swooped down and picked a fish out of the water. And right as it started flying up, a bald eagle flew off of a tree close by and started chasing the osprey. And it swooped down at it like twice, and then the osprey dropped the fish. And then we watched for like 5 more minutes while they kind of flew around and attacked each other.
Wow.
I hope the fish got away, but I feel like after the bald eagle scared away the osprey,
yeah. The bald eagle was probably a better fighter than the osprey, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I had a similar experience a few weeks ago too, where we were doing an invasive species survey, and we were seeing a lot of fawns kind of in the grass. They had like just been born a few weeks ago. So we were like almost stepping on them a few times. They weren't running away from us because they had just been born. And one day in the morning, we heard one of them like yelping or yawning for their mom. And we were very close to it. So we walked over and we saw 2 bundles of fur together. And I took like another step forward, and a red fox picked its head up and like saw us and ran away. The deer was still alive then, but I'm guessing when we left, he probably had babies to feed too.
Yeah. Wow. Nature. Okay, so now we'll get to our problem solved area. I wanted to start with you, Matt, and what problem were you facing when you started using WildNote, and what problem did that solve, and how was it helpful?
Yeah, so before using WildNote, when we're out in the field doing wetland delineations, we use an Arrow 100 GPS with the iPad, and we have ArcGIS Collector downloaded on the iPad. So we were using a geodatabase with our different shapefiles and things in it, and we had a shapefile for our wetland data points.
Yep.
And kind of generically had the list of things that we need to put into the Army Corps, supplemental wetland sheet. And a lot of times what would happen is we, forget to do a part of it, or, there's a lot of redundant things between the uplands and the wetlands where we don't have to collect a certain section for the upland, and then we end up accidentally skipping out on the next wetland point. And then on top of all of that, you have to transcribe from our ArcGIS Collector shapefile into the Excel form. So that was really tedious. And if you're doing like a project with 50 or 100 wetlands, you're spending a long time looking between the shapefile info and typing it into Excel. And it's just a lot of double work, and you make mistakes transcribing, or have a hard time finding things.
Right.
So WildNote, you have the sheet there basically to fill out, that you get prompted each different thing to export directly as the Excel sheet looks in the end, basically.
Right.
So it saved a lot of time in transcribing. You don't miss anything because it's all there already for you to fill out.
Right.
And there's a lot of other bonuses, having the survey status, so that you already did something. A lot of times, if I stopped at one day, I'd be going back, which wetland did I leave off on?
Right.
open up 3 or 4 to figure out which one I had done
Yeah.
reviewing.
Yeah. We actually were working on this used locations or used sampling points feature where if you have a bunch of sampling points and we want to show visually which ones you've collected data against, so that you would immediately visually know, oh wait, that one's like bolded, it still doesn't have data collected against it, because it seems like tracking the completion of getting all the sampling points in can be a little bit tedious out there or difficult to manage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if, for us, we don't have like preset points. We just collect them as we go. But if you had preset sampling points, then I could see where that would be really helpful.
Yeah. So Cheryl, how about you? What were you facing when WildNote came around, and what problems did it solve for you?
Yeah, so similar. We were using paper forms, and I think just having to deal with paper forms when you're working on projects of a scale where you end up with, 100 sample pits by the end of it. It's a lot to manage and keep track of.
Yeah.
And then it's not just the wetland delineation forms. It's when you're doing a wetland delineation, you also are mapping drainages. So you've got drainage forms, wetland delineation forms. You've got multiple crew members. You're trying to get all the forms from the crew members. You're trying to make sure there's consistency across the crew members.
Yeah.
There's also data you can't get while you're in the field that has to be filled in after the fact. So that can be really time consuming, and the QA/QC process of going through 100 plus forms. And I don't know if you've ever tried to put 100 wrinkled, dirty wetland delineation forms in a top loading copy machine to scan, but it doesn't work very well. It jams and they rip. So that was the main thing, was the consistency. And then the QA/QC after the fact was extremely time consuming to go through and check the math, check the wetland indicator status, make sure everyone was consistent that way, add in lat long. And then for botany nerds, the consistency across name usage. Like, well, I want the scientific names, but these crew members want to use the common names, and that sort of thing. So I would say the number one, you could summarize this all with just saying consistency, and then the post processing side of things was a big issue for us.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I'm just, or include, maybe Kristen's gonna ask this question, but there's a lot of people on this call who actually are also using WildNote, and I'd be curious to hear from the two of you. What are your favorite things in terms of what's most helpful to you? Any tips for the people who are already using it on the call?
I think one thing, I think Nancy, you pointed this out to me a few weeks ago, using the Editable Grid on your laptop when you're writing reports. That way you can actually see all of the data at once, as much if it's on the screen, and you can see every PEM wetland. What were the plants I found in my immersion wetlands? What were the plants I found in my scrub shrub wetlands? Instead of having to open up each PDF of kind of your data form, flip to the third sheet, or the second sheet, and try to see what plants you have there. So that feature, definitely, I would familiarize yourself with it and try to use it a little bit for the reports and other things.
How about you, Cheryl? Any tips or?
Yeah, I would say that one of the things that helps a lot is, as much as possible before you go out into the fields, pre-populate as many fields as you can, even if it's fields that you don't want to have too many options. You know where you're going to be, and it's going to be one of 5 options. You can work with Nancy or anyone at WildNote to pre-populate a list to build in consistency.
Right.
And definitely the number one time saver, I think, on large scale projects is the duplicate, the copy feature. I love showing that to my crew, and their minds are blown that they can just copy a whole previous form and update what needs to be updated.
Yeah.
That's a huge one.
I have a question.
And then the final thing I think that's really Go
Sorry.
ahead.
Now, would that often happen? Like I often see like a wetland, an upland, and a, what is it? Like you have 2 points in the same, like a wetland and an upland. Would you end up copying, duplicating for that situation? Or would it be for actually totally different sampling points?
Both and.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say both and, because when you're in one area, you're going to have a lot of the same plants over and over again. You're going to see even the same soil chroma. So it just saves a lot of time. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yep. And then the last thing I was going to add, I would say to make WildNote be even more powerful is alongside the Army Corps wetland form, it's super easy to build your own drainage delineation form and then a wetland summary form. So when I go out with WildNote to do a wetland delineation, I have 3 forms that are easy to collect all the data and stay consistent across the entire survey effort.
That's great. Yeah, so that's the power of, we call it the power of the platform, because we're not just the delineation form, right? We actually have the ability to create any kind of forms. We are actually launching pretty soon the ordinary high watermark form and report coming out of our system, so that export will be just like it's supposed to be. We have people using stream restoration and building their own forms for that sort of thing. So many ways you can support wetland work. How about go-to apps, you guys? Do you have other apps on your phone that you utilize for field work?
I don't think I'll get flack for this, but I like to use iNaturalist for plants I don't know sometimes.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty good. You know, it won't always get you the right answer, but it will get you in the ballpark and allow you to do the necessary research to figure out what you're trying to find.
Yeah. So do you take a picture of it and then it tells you the plant, or how's that work?
Yeah, you take a picture, and if you have service, it will give you kind of a list of options of what it looks like and what other people have recorded in your area.
Nice.
It's definitely more of probably a layman's, like a plant enthusiast app, but I mean, I've found it works pretty well with sedges and things that are typically difficult to identify.
Well, and that's a classic crowdsourced app. It's just going to get better and better and better. Yeah. So that's great. How about you, Cheryl? Go-to apps? Cheryl, did I lose you?
Sorry about that. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear
we can hear you.
Yeah. There's a delay. It's so much fun. So my two apps, I would say the number one app I use a lot is the Books app on the iPhone, because I like to preload like a field guide to hydric soils, whatever Army Corps manual, whatever region I'm in, local floras, things that I don't want to lug on top of all my I put. And then the Jepson eFlora, it's not necessarily an app, but if you have internet service, you can get online and you can keep plants out. If I don't have service and I know certain plants I'm going to need to figure out, I'll save PDFs to iBooks so that I can access that. And then CalFlora is an amazing app that can help you, kind of like iNaturalist, but you don't upload a photo. You can sort of narrow things down by family or genus and get photos and links of plants that are helpful. So yeah, those are the 2 or 3 that I use the most.
All right, I'm going to repeat what you said because we had a little bit of static there. But essentially what you're doing is grabbing these manuals, PDF manuals, and getting them into your iBooks, right? So that you can access them on your phone, Cheryl. And also just want to plug.
Correct.
Yeah, thanks. I also just want to say we do have this really cool feature I learned about when I built KitFox, which is called Project Documents. And you can upload PDFs into your project and reference them through the app as well. So any kind of manuals or reference documents that you want everyone to have on the project, you can do that through Project Documents in WildNote.
One of our attendees said that he has also used iNaturalist, Matt, and he finds it surprisingly accurate as well. So you're not alone. I don't think you're getting too much flack.
I want to add a little tidbit about the project documents too. One thing that's nice about that is everybody that has access to the document or the project have access to the document. So it's not just you and your individual phone. If the admin uploads it, Cheryl and her whole team, everybody will have access to that. So it's pretty
kind of
handy.
one shot. Yeah, good point, Rini. Thank you for that. I'm wondering, we're kind of playing around with a new segment idea called Kristen's Crazy Ideas. What's it going to take for us to upload the delineation forms from WildNote directly to the Army Corps?
Wow.
Is that possible?
Anyone?
Anyone out there?
Chime in on chat. Chime in on chat if anyone out there has some ideas about that.
I mean, are you like emailing these, Matt?
Well, they get attached to our wetland delineation report as an appendix.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like an after the fact, along with our full report.
Yeah. So it's a full report. How many like pages is that full report?
Well, it depends. It's usually like, I mean, for smaller projects, it's 10 to 12 pages of text, and then 100 pages of data forms and 20 pages of figures and a photo log.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I was just going to add to that there's an upload form that the Sacramento district and others in the West use. So we have to submit the paper forms, but then there's a spreadsheet that they ask us to populate. Yeah. And with WildNote, I can do an export that I can plop right into the spreadsheet, but it's still an extra step. And I would say the Corps is still trying to figure out what to do with the new regulatory business that just went into effect. So we'll see about them going digital.
Yeah, right.
And it seems also, what I learned from all of the different wetland people who I know on this call and from you two, that it's really individual in terms of the regions that you're in and the actual core people you're dealing with. It just does not seem to be 100% consistent across the country.
So anybody out there, wetland folks, have any questions for our panelists? Now's a perfect time to ask.
I mistakenly answered Wendy's question, Kristen. Does WildNote incorporate other media, such as EDS, which I don't know what that is, that plots the exact location and confirms by location GPS coordinates that the location depicts a jurisdictional wetland? I'm not quite sure what that means, but I can say that we just did develop an integration with the Eos Arrow product line, where if you can Bluetooth to your mobile device, both iOS and Android, and you're using that for your GNSS submeter accuracy, then WildNote will pick up those more highly accurate points automatically in the data sheet. So Winnie, I'm not sure if that answers your question, but maybe if you could send in
great.
A little clarification.
All right, so I'll just wait to see if there's any more questions that come in. One of the questions, what were the two apps Cheryl talked about, and that was iBooks and CalFlora. So, all right, so let's get to, it is 11:31, so let me go back and share my screen. Let's get the Zoom here, share screen. PowerPoint. Okay, so thank you, Matt and Cheryl, for joining us today and sharing your expertise with us. We have another Lunch and Learn planned in a couple weeks, and this one is on photo management. One of the things that I was amazed at when I first built Kit Fox and also with WildNote is how many photos actually get uploaded. And I have some stats for that, actually. So Stantec has submitted 507 surveys on WildNote so far, 1,309 photos. So I always find that interesting. It's more photos than surveys usually. And EDR has submitted 1,120 surveys with 2,117 photos. So we really see the power of the visual medium of photos, and we're going to talk about photo management in our next Lunch and Learn. And that will be with Rosemary Blois and Ivan Parr, both had been working with WildNote through their AECOM employment. And then after that, we've got veg management, cultural resource management with Chris Webster, SWIP or SWEPP. I love all the different ways people talk about that. And then we've added another one, building better bids, leveraging technology to win projects. And I think there'll be some more coming your way as well. And like I said, if you have any requests, please send them our way. So,
hey, Kristen, I'd like to plug our little thank you gift if you have
great.
a moment.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Sure. We have a giveaway. This is a battery pack. I know sometimes when you're out in the field for a long day, it has 2 USB connections. If you're out in the field for a long day, these come in really handy. Everybody should have one. We're going to give one away, and we're also going to give away our smudgeaways. That's a nice way to keep your glasses and screens clean. So when you receive your thank you for having attended this, and thank you in advance, you'll have a chance to sign up for the raffle, and you will definitely, everybody gets a smudge away when they sign up. So thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate your attendance.